Dr. Joseph Martin, The Future of Medicine and Psychology. And this, of course, will include psychiatry. We're on an evolutionary path here as a human species on planet Earth. The Earth is about 15.6 billion years old, and the human species is about 4.6 billion years old. At least our origins, and of course, now we need to remember that first off, I'm going to put a little aside here for all the scientists listening and the would-be scientists and those of you who are young and will be training in all of the sciences in a syncretic, unified manner and not in its sectarian kind of a piecemeal way that it's been taught today in the universities. Of course, it's an evolutionary path. We've come so far and we have so far to go for a full understanding of true science. Now, in the beginning, of course, we come from spirit. All things come from spirit. In the universe, we know this from astrophysics and astronomy, and we know this from physics, and we know this from chemistry, that all things started from spirit, from the cosmic consciousness. If we're into spiritual physics here, with the unification of all knowledge as a unity. Spiritual physics suggests that, and spiritual astronomy suggests that all things came from the dark energy, the dark matter, which we call the cosmic consciousness, into a matter, which we call the Christ consciousness, and that matter took on different forms, starting first with hydrogen, then helium, and so on up the chemical periodic table, which we know in physics, in chemistry, and biochemistry, and metallurgy and geology. That being the case, so all things, including the human species, comes from spirit. We need to understand that we're going through a cycle phase here of the human species on Earth, that we have come from spirit and then became from the etheric spirit, the Akasha, if you like, into thought forms, and we created thought forms or minds, higher mental minds and spiritual minds, and eventually out of that we became astral emotional energy bodies. And then from that, we became physical, biological, biochemical, genetic bodies. All this, by the way, is in some of the ancient books from the collective hereditary messages of the human species, particularly the Bhagavad Gita and some other Hindu texts and Vedas and Upanishads in Sanskrit and now in English. So to find a true future medicine and psychology of the true human nature, and you want to refer to the other videos I've just done on the philosophy and the history of medicine, 2 videos, we need to understand that the compilation and the synthesis at this time has to include a Lemurian medicine, Atlantean medicine, and then of course post-Atlantean medicine, which would include ancient Egyptian medicine, Tibetan medicine, Hindu Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, other Asian medicines, all the indigenous medicines, the herbal medicines, the shamanistic medicines, the Dreamtime, Toltec medicines, and the knowledge that we have now of all the use and need for the human body of minerals, and not just the physical minerals, but the spirit of the minerals, and the same for all the plants, because we're made of plant beings. We have a lot of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in our body. So plant medicine, spirits, tree medicine, berries, and so on and so on, and how our body utilizes those, not just biochemically, but energetically and spiritually. And of course, then in the history of medicine, we need to accumulate and synthesize and unify all the knowledge from Arab medicine and Roman and Greek medicine, as well as medieval monastic medicine, and of course Western medicine, which is just a tiny heartbeat in the evolution of human medicine, psychology, and the understanding of human nature and how we tick. And of course, we need to appropriate and acknowledge and assimilate all of homeopathic medicine, naturopathic medicine, anthroposophical medicine, and all the other medicines that have come forward in the last 30 years, which would be energy medicine. And this is, of course, what I've been happily enjoying researching clinically as a clinician, as a psychologist, and someone steeped in cross-cultural medical traditions, including indigenous, Eastern, Arab, Roman, Greek, and Western and medieval monastic, and the modern medicines of the future, which is our topic for here today. Now, we need to understand then that we're more than just a mere material physical body. And when we do, then all things can come to us then. We need to understand how we have thought forms and memes and how there's morphic resonance between our unconscious and our conscious minds with the superconsciousness of the universe and the cosmos. And we need to use that morphic resonance and allow the morphic resonance of the unified human knowing with the cosmic resonance of the unified field, we call it, in the highest states of superconscious awareness, which comes through meditation and yoga. And all scientists, to be true scientists, need to become one with the superconscious in order to understand how everything in the universe and humanity ticks. So we need to understand the unconscious, the archetypes, the complexes, the nature of the unconscious, how it's structured and how it's functioned, and how it informs and in a way rules or reigns the conscious mind of the individual and the collective consciousness of humanity and the species through different cycles and sine waves, if you like, over time and as we evolve. And most importantly, as the ego has developed since the time of the ancient Greek democracies, we need to understand how the ego operates and how it can be transmuted and transformed into the higher self-consciousness of what we call the self in psychology. And here I'm referring to Jungian psychology. This needs to be done through all the scientific methods we have, which are logic and cognition and scientific method of hypotheses, research, results, conclusions, and re-hypothesizing and reaching new, broader syntheses of theses so that we can have higher and better conclusions. Also through intuition, through music, through play, through drama, through dance, through poetry, using the other hemisphere of our brain and our awareness, because in these symbolic, archetypal, dreamlike, visionary states, things come to us. In fact, in the history of science, all the greatest breakthroughs in science came through visionary, dreamlike states, using the right brain or hemisphere, not just the left. And when the corpus callosum connects within an individual, the two sides, the symbolic, the analogic, with the digital and the scientific logical side, then we have the capacity to make great breakthroughs in the future of all science, not just medicine and psychology. Einstein, Kekulé, and many other great scientists all got their visions of their quantum mechanics or the carbon ring through their visions sitting in a bathtub. So have fun with it. Now, what will the future of medicine be? We'll have to recognize that we come from spirit and we're having earthly human bodies as the epiphenomenon of who we truly are as spiritual beings made of love and light. And again, I say this is not New Age. This is deep, ancient, resounding, synthetic, unified science that needs to come together to help us on our evolutionary path for the future for thousands and tens of thousands of years to come. We need to provide our descendants with the knowledge base of a true scientific structure and functioning so that they can advance far beyond ourselves. We need to do this for our descendants. We need to give them something, a heritage, which they can draw upon and stand on our shoulders as we've stood on the mystic Newton's shoulders and others to advance our science. And of course, Newton and Einstein were visionary mystics, not just rational thinkers. So, what is the future of medicine? It will be based, as I said, on the understanding that all our relations, and I refer to all the microorganisms, bacteria, viruses, spirochetes, and so on, they actually are positive and useful for us when we understand their beauty and their beneficence with us, and we treat them in a manner in which they can become useful for us as we can become useful for them. When we have this unification of our mind and the balance of accepting all our relationships as being one with ourselves, then all bacteria and viruses, instead of creating great epidemics and us trying to destroy them, they can become useful and they will change genetically and modify themselves to become syncretically useful to ourselves as we can become with them. And likewise with all the minerals, metals, plants, vegetables, and even the animals, which I probably likely within the next few hundred years, we will no longer be eating animal um, food because it does lower our consciousness and blocks us from attaining greater scientific methods, theory, and knowledge. The future, though, the greatest future will be when we come to understand a synthesis of all the basic historical medicines I've just outlined in this video, and come to be aware that the core, the key, the source of all that is in the universe, the cosmos, we understand this by understanding more of our creation mythologies. Do well to read all of Joseph Campbell's mythologies, particularly his creation mythologies, his animal mythologies, his plant mythologies, and integrate that into your consciousness. But from the very source and from the very beginning of the universe, which is 15.6 billion years, at least this particular universe, and we're still on our way through this one until the Brahma decides to close this and start all over again and dissolve all that we are in the material world and our consciousness, and then close that and then understand and create a new uh, universe. The main meme, theme, worldview, and process and archetype of all of life in the universe, including stars, galaxies, planets, moons, suns, and all species, including the human species, is creation, sustaining of that creation, and letting it evolve and grow and play and have lila or joy, as we say in Sanskrit, and then the dissolution of that when the time is ready for all to dissolve and then start a new recreation. And this happens in all species and all cycles of time. When we acknowledge that, then we realize that we're on a path to greater awareness, both individually and collectively. Now, there are ancient knowledge bases in Lemuria, Atlantis, and in our present post-Atlantic time, post-Atlantis time, of the Egyptian knowledge of life, death, and the afterlife and rebirth, and the resurrection body in the ancient um, Egyptian books of the dead and of the life, and of an ancient Egyptian book of the hours. And we have that in Tibet. There's the great Tibetan Book of the Dead, and the biographies and the autobiography of Milarepa shows a lot about this knowledge. And then we also have these texts in other formats as well. In India, there are a lot of texts on the resurrection body, as we call it, which can be done through breathwork, mind, willpower, intention, and also emotional clarity and purification, and becoming a unified source with the unified field theory, or the unified source energy field. Now, primarily then, if we go to the very foremost or furthermost point of our exploration with the furtherance of medicine and psychology and human nature, we can see that there is in all the cultures of the world that I've studied as an anthropologist, a medical psychological anthropologist, and as a clinician, I've come to understand that there is something called the resurrection body, that the power of spirit, the power of mind, willpower, intention, and also emotion, linked with the source of all that is, the great light, and medicine of the future will be based on light, by the way, meaning color and sound and vibration and the unification of all colors of the rainbow into one, that will be able to sustain and create what we call the resurrection body. When you understand the Gospel of the New Testament, and particularly the Gospel of John, and how Jesus himself was one of the first to create the resurrection body in our known historical time of the last 2,000 years, and all this, by the way, can be understood through the writings of Paramahansa Yogananda, and particularly the 2-volume series, The Second Coming of the Christ, the Higher Intelligence of what Jesus really proved within his life, death, and resurrection. Then you will come to understand that medicine will be the capacity for individuals and the collective to, at some point in the future, more and more individuals will understand this truth and cosmic Christ reality and come to be able to create and sustain not only a furtherance and longevity of their physical body while they're here in an earth life, but they will be able to, at the point of death, so-called death, when it's the removal of the physical, biological overcoat, it's not the real you at all, they will also attain that higher super consciousness to be able to recreate and resurrect their body at will through the matrix of their blueprint or template from source, relinked with the source in a humble, open, surrendering way through supreme surrender to grace to recreate their physical body at will. And this would be what's called the energy resurrection body, which is immutable, immortal, eternal, and as fully sustainable, and has capacities within the third dimension and the fourth and the fifth and sixth and seventh and higher dimensional vibrational realities. So there's a lot of excitement here in the planet now as more people in all cultures are realizing that this is not only capacities of humans in past times and cultures and ancient civilizations, but it's also the capacity and the knowledge that's coming back to us, and we're remembering there is a power and a structure and a way to follow this path through grace and surrender and through knowledge and through love, supreme love, and through supreme acknowledgement that we are beings of light. That's for now what we can say. There will be further videos on this topic. I wish you all excitement and joy and exploration and inspiration as you read and research and journal and study these ancient and modern books, some of which I've mentioned, including Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, in which he makes assertions about the truth of this. And read the Gospel of John in the New Testament. All love and light to you, blessings to you, namaste, joy, and great love. Dr. Joseph Martin here for you.